Welcome to SME On Point. I'm your host, Diabosito. Franchise ownership allows for the development of entrepreneurial capacity in a novice entrepreneur. At the same time, it helps towards the creation of a new business. So now the Franchise Association of South Africa says it is lobbying the government to make franchising part of the small business model, the same way that the Malaysians do it. The association believes that this is the fastest way to achieve economic growth. Earlier in the week, the Gordon Institute of Business Science hosted a panel discussion looking into the future of franchising. Owning a franchise is one of the easiest gateways into entrepreneurship. Some of the benefits are that you don't have to start a business from ground. You basically run a business that already has systems and processes in place, one that already offers a well-established product or service. The Franchise Association says it signed up more people at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Unfortunately, because of the COVID impact, a lot of people were retrenched, and that saw an opportunities. Franchisor saw a number of increases in franchise inquiries, people now wanting to get into franchising, others seeing it as a kind of a what we call a side hustle. So those were the ones that came across, and also education did quite well because they took up technology much quicker than any other franchisors would take up on e-commerce.
The association says South Africa's franchising economic output as a percentage of GDP ranks in the top 5 worldwide. Franchising cuts across 14 sectors and contributes 736 billion rands, an equivalent of 15.7% to the country's GDP, and employs more than 500,000 people. This is why the association believes that it is one of the quicker routes that can stimulate the economy.
In June, we actually hosted the minister in Malaysia, and they've got a very interesting concept which we actually want to lobby for with our local government, that franchising should actually form part of small business development, because we've seen how the winning formulas of entrepreneurship, small business development and job creation weave together to stimulate the economy. So they were here saying, here are brands that want to come into South Africa, but we are also looking at these brands that want to that we want to take into Malaysia, and that is controlled by government. The funding is there, jobs are created, it benefits the locals. So that is our plight now, that we're saying we want to work very closely with government to ensure that franchising is seen as a governing body, and also learn from Malaysia. Franchising is actually an act in Malaysia in terms of stimulating the economy.
The chief executive of Cash Converters agrees with the sentiment, calling on government, civil society and business to support franchising as a business model to help grow the economy.
As South Africans, we are entrepreneurial. We make things happen. But there seems to be so many potholes in the road, if I can use that expression, in trying to allow people and emphasize to people that growing this economy by encouraging small business, particularly in the franchise industry, must be the route to go. So the challenges are life skills, effectively, in general. If you're looking for franchisees, what are their life skills, what are their background, what are their business understanding? That context is a challenge. So it talks to education, it talks to the politicians trying to free up the amount of administrative and bureaucratic gatekeeping that is happening.
While some franchises are affordable, depending on your pocket, others require a couple of million. However, prudent financial management will keep you in the game for longer.
So at a high level, the total investment is 4 million rand, and maybe to go back to what Lorette was saying, generally in the franchising industry, you're not going to want to raise debt more than 50% of your total investment, and that talks to the affordability, and particularly in our business as well, because we're lending money, the cash flow at the front end is very important. You start out and you start with a debtors book of 0, and you've got to build that book, so the cash is flying out of the business all the time. Franchisees getting nervous about this, and it's important to manage that cash flow, so you don't want too much debt in that.
So to a large extent, it comes down to affordability and what the business can afford. But there's a couple of things that you do need to bear in mind when we look at the quantum of finance that we give for a certain deal. So we won't necessarily go out and say, let's do 100% gearing against the business, because there's certain things you need to actually consider. You know, one is the affordability, Two is the actual balance sheet and solvency and having that equity and that owner being committed to it. And then there's obviously the brand regulations, because the higher the gearing and the more we actually load on a business, the more risk it is to a brand ultimately. You know, the more you gear it, the more the risk is of closure.
It is a fact that businesses fail due to a variety of reasons, and being part of a franchising group is no exception. But the failure rates are said to be lower. The failure rate of franchising is less than 10% compared to over 90% of independent businesses that fail.
All franchise businesses operate on the basis where the franchisee is an independently owned and operated business. So the franchisee essentially is responsible for their own business, and their association to the brand or to the franchise is for all the other benefits that you get, and I said their marketing, administration, training, etc., etc. The point being, it still is up to the individual business owner, the franchisee, to ensure that they do what they have to do to make their business successful.
Experts say the top 3 reasons why franchises fail are due to the owners not being hands-on in the business, hiring incompatible staff, and lack of franchisor support. For success, it is encouraged that the franchisee engages their franchisor, develop a relationship, be proactive, and remember that at the end of the day, it is your business. Diabosito, SABC News, Johannesburg. Welcome back. You're still watching SME on Point, the SABC's small business slot. The economic challenges in the country are making it difficult for businesses to scale up and also grow. These include rolling blackouts and, as of late, water shedding as well. Mark Pearson is the founder and managing director at Barron and Cabot, and he believes that South Africa's small businesses have the opportunity to grow globally. Pearson works with many African countries with the goal of helping them recover faster, particularly from the COVID-19 challenges that, wrecked a lot of economies, and has shared insights for strategies that can bring Africa faster to recovery. He joins me now via Zoom just to understand how you as a small business owner can make it globally and expand your business there. Mark, thank you so much and welcome to SME on Point. I'm sure you've had the pleasure of watching the insert that we just played before we went to the break, talking about the future of franchising and how that can help with the SME development. I hope that's one of the things that you do when you're helping countries to re-strategize their economies. What do you make of as entrepreneurship as well as franchising?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we all started business with mentors. Using the interview I listened to, it was quite interesting actually. I was paying attention because it's something that we've been doing quite a lot of ourselves. I think in business you tend to be involved in joint ventures with other companies, or we deal with property investments, in the UK, but we have global offices. Even just as a company, we're doing joint ventures on builds, and then we use international companies to sell our products. So we're already doing that. I think certainly for a young entrepreneur or anyone, don't have to be young to get into a business, having working with these types of businesses that are already established, but then being able to run your own business with that brand, and more importantly for me is the support systems and the processes. I think it's incredible that it's really what makes business work, isn't it? Having the right processes and having learned lessons from before and being able to pass those on to people that sort of take the management after you. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Speaking about lessons, you've been quite instrumental in helping countries recover, like I said in my intro. Tell me exactly how you're doing that.
So sorry, would you repeat that? How are we helping countries recover?
Countries recover, particularly from the ravages of COVID-19. How are you doing that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'd like to think we were helping out. We really, what we do, we're working with countries around the world. We're working with businesses in across the globe, from Asia, Africa, either side. And what we're doing is we're employing people. So we're doing two things. We work as a direct. We sell our products direct, which is important, but On top of that, we're working with taking on people who are, worked within property in South Africa, for instance, or Nigeria, or, East Africa, and helping those people monetize property internationally. So helping those people educate, local investors to invest in the UK, and therefore bringing the revenue within country, allowing them to create more jobs. And in many countries, obviously, it's highly competitive because, if you're able to set up a company in, Johannesburg, I think the last person was in. If you can set up a company in Johannesburg, you can compete with companies in central London, central New York with your own client base. You've got a really, really good opportunity to scale and generate jobs. So it's been really interesting. We've had a huge uptake and been able to create quite a number of jobs all the way through the pandemic. People invest in assets when economies are looking scary.
Yeah.
And most people see the UK property as a fairly good one. So we're seeing massive uptake across Africa for both job and property.
Tell me about the kind of opportunities that are there for South African small businesses in overseas markets. I heard you talk about property, so I can imagine that that's also one of the opportunities that are there. But I know that my viewers want to know in what industries can these opportunities be found?
Well, the incredible thing about technology now is that, there's huge amounts of international work. As I say, we specialize in property, but everything's online. So we've got, you can be sat in South Africa and you can use technology, you can look online, and everything's there, everything's digitalized these days. It's getting better and better. The world's getting smaller and smaller. So really anything, obviously the previous businesses that were referenced in the last bit we were watching there, seem to be more retail. So, you've got a presence, but there's also huge amounts of opportunities that are based, online or dealing with clients with, international financial markets, international property markets, primarily working with, investors, whereby the investor is just moving money, whether that's, financial services, financial instruments, assets, whatever that is. And you can be anywhere in the world. It's truly incredible now how you can do that. Yeah,
we do talk about, how the continent of Africa is quite a jewel on its own. And of course, it having its own lower rates of African currencies. What then what's the incentive of now going abroad if there's more money and opportunities also to be made here in Africa?
Yeah, it's about diversification. So you're really, I don't think at any point you're saying, don't do one or the other. It's that they don't need to be mutually exclusive. You can be investing in your home country, investing internationally, but equally, international investment doesn't mean that money's not coming into the country. It's the opposite. What you're trying to do is you're trying to utilize global markets to generate more income within your own market or your own business or your own individual bank account, whatever it is. You're trying to bring as much of it back. You're trying to just maximize your returns. So, if the currency weakens, you're in a better position looking globally. The South Africans are incredible, really. You're already, there's a great middle class and growing middle class. There's a real huge understanding of international markets as it is. I think sometimes when you live in South Africa, you don't realize that, people are already transferring money to dollars and pounds, right? You already have an advantage over most of the countries who, a lot of countries don't do that, day to day or even think about it. So you already have an advantage on the international stage. So then with that, there's opportunities to, if you have moved money into pounds or dollars to go and invest that. Yeah. And what some people don't realize is in our market with property, as an example, you can get mortgages, you can leverage it. So, even though it's in a different country, you can still leverage your investment and borrow on an investment, which covers all your costs.
Yeah. Mark, I can imagine that Baron and Cabot, if our viewers go to a website, they'll be able to get a lot more information on how you can assist them to be able to utilize opportunities to be able to grow globally. But thank you so much for your time. That's all we have time for on SME On Point. Thank you very much for joining us on SME On Point.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.